The last 24 hours have been absolutely crazy. If you guys have been watching everything unfold, wherever you get your news, on X, on mainstream media, whatever the case may be, I would always recommend not following mainstream media. However, over the last 24 hours, it has been a crazy time in the global landscape. And this is all because of the war breaking out overseas. Now, we're going to talk about this. We're going to be addressing it, how it's going to affect the market. And yes, by the title of this video, you can assume that I believe that a stealth bull market is brewing right now. So let's talk about a few things. Let's address the market itself. So most people, I feel like, expected the market to have a massive sell-off today. We did have a slight sell-off earlier into, around like roughly the beginning of the 28th, going into like 4 a.m. And then from that point on, the market started to bounce back in a big way. Now, fear and greed, we're still at about roughly 16. Yesterday, we were at 14. Last week, we were at 14 as well. Last month, we were at about 18. In the beginning of the month, we were at about roughly 5. It's kind of wild, but this is how the last 30 days have been. We've been in extreme fear for pretty much 30 days. Now, I would argue that typically when we see extreme fear hovering around these lows, with price action also creating a higher low during this time, we're starting to potentially see bullish structure. I would argue that we're close to the bottom, or we already saw the bottom. Now, Bitcoin's fear and greed is at about roughly 14. Yesterday, we were at about 11. Last week, 9. Last month, 16. Again, very similar to the total market cap with fear and greed. I believe that we are pretty much bottomed out here. With Bitcoin, the main focus here is how the daily structure looks on the chart. I know that a lot of you don't care about charting, you don't care about technical analysis. However, it's playing out perfectly. We have our major low back in the beginning of the month. We have our low recently back in roughly the end of the month. And now we have our next low here forming on the chart. This is a higher low setup. However, we still are hitting major resistance, and we just hit resistance on our daily candle of about roughly 68,246. We need a daily candle close over this level. And even then, we're still not done until we have a nice daily candle close over roughly $71,000. And yes, you might go off of, the candle bodies here, and you might say, well, Nick, what about 70,600? Sure. That's a great level for us to get a close over as well. However, I want to see us get over that major wick going all the way back to roughly like the beginning of the month. So anywhere between like 71,000 to like 71.6K, I will take that. The next key area of demand should be the last prior areas where we had multiple candle body closes. So ultimately, I would be looking at about roughly almost 76K to about almost 79.4K. So this would be our next key area if we could break over these next two highs. But we still need to watch for, this resistance level to pretty much be, invalidated or us break over it. So again, this is the key focus, breaking over 68.2K, invalidating resistance, continuing to the next key area. But we need to watch for a rejection, because that means that we will essentially retest our daily support right around roughly 65.8K. And if we lose that, then we will retarget the lows from the 24th. And then if that's lost, obviously we target the beginning of February lows. So let's avoid that. That would be great to see. But again, the structure here, even on the lower time frame view, like the 4-hour, this chart looks very, very good. Even prior to our, move here back on the 25th, we created a higher high going off of the prior highs. We just didn't get a high over the 14th and also over the 8th candles. But I do think on this next move here, we should start to see that carved out. And if we do see that, then yes, Bitcoin would flip into bullish territory. Now with XRP, again, it's the same story, right? Where we have those higher low structure, that higher low structure in place where we have these multiple higher lows. We still have yet to see a higher high prior to, our recent high back here This is a lower high. We are hitting resistance right around roughly $1.43. We need to break over that, and then we need to officially break over roughly $1.51. That would allow us to have that retest of the demand zone. We already did retest it with a wick, but we failed to break out. We need to see it close over $1.67. That would have us continuing our move all the way up to about roughly almost $2 on XRP. So watch for XRP to also play out perfectly with Bitcoin, because both of these charts will essentially follow each other, because XRP has been following Bitcoin closely already, with the overall structure looking almost identical on both of these charts. But so far, XRP and Bitcoin looking very good, even with all of the news. Now, let's talk about the news. So early in the day on the 28th, at about roughly 12:46 a.m., we got the big update regarding war has begun. We're starting to see strikes pretty much all throughout, the night, and this continued pretty much all throughout the day. And everyone was pretty much concerned on how this would affect the market. And initially, yes, it did affect the market in a very negative way, as you guys can see that major sell-off. And then here we have, pretty much this is right around when all of these posts started to hit X, where everyone was starting to say, all right, that's it. Strikes are starting. This is basically war happening. And then Bitcoin just did the opposite of what almost everyone would expect, which was a much further sell-off. And why exactly did that happen? Well, I'm going to get to that here in a moment. But we also got another big update regarding breaking. Israel, targeted dozens of targets in Iran, and this happened at roughly 1:33 a.m. And then the Kabaisi letter also announced that breaking, the U.S. announces that tonight's strikes on Iran were a joint attack between the U.S. and Israel, per Wall Street Journal. Details include: number one, explosions are being reported in Iran's capital, Tehran. Israeli media says several assassination strikes were carried out. Number three, key government facilities are being targeted in Iran. Number four, at least 2 waves of attacks are currently being reported. Number five, targets reportedly include intelligence headquarters and the presidential palace. The U.S. and Israel now appear to be at war with Iran for the second time in 8 months. And yeah, this happened before. We already talked about it back in, I think, the summer of 2025. But to build on top of this, a lot of people were saying this is because Iran had nuclear weapons. However, back in the summer of 2025, this is from the White House website, by the way, Iran's nuclear facilities have been obliterated. That's what we heard from the White House. So, again, why exactly were we attacking Iran today? Well, a lot of people were speculating on it. I'm not here to speculate. All we know is that we did launch an attack, and we also can confirm that the Iranian supreme leader was reportedly killed during the U.S.-Israeli strikes, and we did get the official confirmation breaking. Iran officially confirms supreme leader Khamenei is dead. So yeah, this happened all in the span of the last 24 hours. Now, the main reason why Bitcoin started to rally is because, again, their leader is now dead. And with this would ultimately confirm that this war is potentially over. However, it doesn't seem that simple. The main focus from my point of view is how could this lead to a stealth bull run? Well, I put into perspective. And again, I hate the idea of, talking about markets while war is happening. And I even said here, I hate to be that guy thinking about the markets while war is actively going on. But at the end of the day, that's why you all follow me. That's why you also subscribe to me. That's why you guys are watching this video. It's very easy to be in the camp of those thinking that this will cause stocks and crypto to crash heavily come Monday. But what if we don't? This market is already extremely bearish, with extreme fear still being in play. If this war escalates even further, everyone will be bearish on assets. Now, we are starting to hear talks that this war is going to escalate. We did just get an update. This is from Raw Alerts. We have breaking: Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have formally pledged severe and decisive retaliation against the United States and Israel following reports of Khamenei's death. Meanwhile, a visibly emotional anchor on Iranian state television erupted in anger, declaring that President Donald Trump is going to pay a price no American president has ever paid. Revenge is coming like never seen before. Now, again, when we start to hear things like this, I can't help but to think that a lot of this is, kind of getting exaggerated. And a lot of it is just fear mongering. I don't believe that this is going to escalate the way that most people are assuming. But even if that is the case, I did say here that that setup is the perfect excuse for a stealth bull run to happen. Number one, war equals extreme fear and panic. Number two, fear equals major sell-offs and liquidations. Number three, shorts flood equals fuel for a massive short squeeze, because typically what we would see is shorts adding up. Everyone's looking to short the market because they think that this is going to cause a further downside. And then we start to see that push to the upside. So I said here, typically markets will never bottom on good news. War is exactly the type of headline that causes markets to bottom, because again, this is like the peak fear headline. Oh, we're going to war. This is World War III. That's it. Like this is going to be very, very bad, right? So again, when we think about this, and I even stated here that like I understand the consequences of war. So before anyone says anything, I pray and hope for anyone who has family and friends serving or living around these areas, because I do. Hopefully everything is, all good. Hopefully we can avoid this, being escalated into a much larger war. And, again, I just hope that everyone makes it out, safe and, healthy. But to build on top of that, I said here that the key thing here is the setup behind the markets. Number one, oil is the key. It's spiking now, but watch for it to stabilize. This is a big deal around the bond markets, because if we see yields and the dollar cooling while liquidity pressure increases, we will see risk on assets go insane. Number two, liquidity expectations are the next factor, especially during conflict. When you have global conflict like war, central banks begin to shift quickly with rate cuts, QE, treasury adjustments, and more. That means we could see further dollar weakness and yields also dropped combined with the oil situation. This all leads to risk on assets bouncing rapidly. Then number three, risk on assets being heavily discounted. I don't think that I need to tell you guys that most of this space, when we think about a lot of these assets, I could just grab like ADA for an example. Okay, we go back to the 1 month view. ADA is back to prices that we haven't seen since going back to roughly, August 2024. And then prior to that, we're talking about pretty much bear market lows. Okay, like that's how low most of these prices are. And I said, with risk on assets being heavily discounted, we are already at macro deep levels in crypto. Stocks are at, a different story, because again, obviously stocks are at all-time highs. Panic selling has been exaggerated over the last few weeks, but this war now being a big topic, this can lead to max sell pressure along with late shorting leading to a short squeeze and a V-shaped recovery. The crowd will wait for this war to end and for announcements to tell them that it's all over. By that time, well, we could see markets, including crypto, surging significantly. The stealth bull run begins when sentiment is at max fear. It is. The crowd begins to position shorts. We already witnessed a lot of short selling today, and the narrative is that war will continue to escalate further. Do I need to tell you guys anything, further than that? The setup here is that this war is going to, continue to rage on. And I really kind of go back to June, because I feel like June is definitely a perfect time to kind of go back on the chart and really just look at what happened from that time onward. Now, this was on June 25th. Now, June 25th, this was right around here on the chart. So markets were already bottom during this time. Okay. Bitcoin started to, jump to the upside. By the way, Bitcoin was down severely from its prior peak in May. We were down about roughly, 12.26%. It was nothing nearly close to what we are seeing over here. Obviously, this is a completely different scenario with Bitcoin. But, we were down significantly. And then by the 25th, when we got this announcement, markets were starting to really kind of jump already. We kind of chopped for a little bit longer until July. And then after that, we went, parabolic all the way throughout the summer, all the way throughout, pretty much the fall timeframe into roughly the beginning of October, when the October 10th candle hits and we just continued to sell off. So again, very similar to this time period back here. I feel as if with the current structure on the chart, with, war now being the big topic of discussion, if we start to see Bitcoin carve out a path to the demand zone here, I feel as if even if we have a slight sell-off and we start to kind of, cool off a bit before the next big move, I feel as if we can have a strong rally back to the prior highs very quick. And the reason why is because everything that I outlined. This could very well be that stealth bull run moment. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey guys, I've been right this entire time, because I definitely haven't been. But I feel like with everything happening now, with extreme fear, with the sentiment right now, I think that this could be the next big move here. Monday is definitely going to be very important to watch. I think that I'm going to be making a video tomorrow night for you guys, just to kind of give you guys a quick update regarding, stock futures, because we will start to see stock futures trading. Just to kind of see how things are looking and how people are gauging, what's going to happen next here. But I feel like this is the perfect moment and the perfect narrative for us to kind of bottom out on, because again, like we think like, how much worse can this get? Well, war could very well be that next big thing that, causes the next massive drop in the market, but that would be the most expected outcome. What if the most expected outcome is the opposite of what we actually get, which is a massive rebound on risk on assets because of the, oil trade leading to, the bond market and the dollar cooling off, then liquidity, right? We start to see potential, rate cuts with QE. I mean, we know that the new Fed chair is very, very focused on, rate cuts. And then we also think about how discounted risk on assets already are. I feel like this is the perfect narrative. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video.